They thought a weak farmer couldn't protect them. Now, reborn with memories of commanding modern armies and wielding forbidden magic, I return. As a warlord, they crawled back, begging to serve. But that comes later. First, I had to survive the shame. Chief Brennick's shadow fell across me like a burial shroud. The entire Ashvale tribe had gathered in the central clearing. 300 faces I'd known since birth, now twisted with disgust, or worse, pity. My knees pressed into the packed earth where we threshed grain every harvest. Today they would thresh me. Soren Ashvale. Brennick's voice boomed across the crowd. You speak of flanking maneuvers when you should speak of crop rotations. You draw battle formations in the dirt when you should be pulling weeds. You are defective. In my past life, I commanded tank divisions across desert terrain. I coordinated air support with ground assault. I watched men die and made the calls that determined who lived. Here, I couldn't even lift a harvest axe without my arms trembling. Brennick grabbed my shoulder and forced me to my knees. The ritual blade caught morning sunlight, a curved thing meant for this purpose alone. The Ashvale mark brands you. As ours, he said. But you have never been ours. Not truly. The blade bit into my shoulder. I didn't scream. I felt worse in both lives. But the children in the crowd jeered anyway. They threw rotted vegetables. Their parents didn't stop them. Brennick scraped away the clan mark in 3 brutal strokes. Blood ran down my arm and dripped into dirt that had fed my family for generations. The pain was nothing. This story is powered by Butterfly Stories on Patreon, where we continue the stories you love. Want more? Link in the description. Compared to the severing I felt in my chest. The thorn waste will finish what nature started, Brennick said. He spat at my feet. They marched me to the border at spear point. 2 warriors flanked me, men I'd grown up with, men who now looked through me like I was already dead. The transition from fertile heartlands to thorn waste was stark. Green fields gave way to cracked earth and twisted scrub within 100 paces. One warrior pressed a water skin into my hands. The other tossed a dull knife at my feet. Don't come back, the first one said. Almost gentle, almost apologetic. I picked up the knife and walked into the Badlands without looking back. 3 days. 3 days of poisoned soil that grew nothing edible. 3 days of hiding from raider patrols and feral dog packs. 3 days of rationing water that ran out on the second evening. I collapsed against ancient stones, ruins from the forgotten empire that once ruled these territories. My vision swam. The dog pack that had been tracking me for hours finally closed in, 7 mangy beasts with ribs showing through patchy fur. The largest one bared its teeth. A stone cracked against its skull. The dog yelped and scrambled back. The pack scattered into the scrub, whining. Still breathing, a withered voice echoed from the ruins. Good. Means I didn't waste a perfectly good throwing arm. Elder Merrick emerged from the shadows, a man I remembered from childhood, exiled years before my birth for being too old to work. His eyes were milky with age, but they fixed on me with unsettling precision. Soren Ashvale, he said. We're just Soren now, I suppose. Come inside before something worse than dogs finds you. He dragged me into the ruins, fed me brackish water and dried meat that tasted like leather. I recovered enough to sit upright by evening. That's when he tested me. Hypothetical, Merrick said, settling onto a crumbling stone bench. You're defending this ruin. 20 attackers approach from the east. You have 3 fighters and high ground. What do you do? The question triggered something deep. My past life surged forward. Thousands of hours in war rooms, sand tables, tactical simulations. Funnel them through the eastern breach, I said without thinking. Station 1 fighter at the choke point, 1 on the elevated platform for range harassment. Keep the 3rd mobile. As a reaction force, the attackers will stack up at the breach. Concentrated fire. Controlled engagement. They'll break before half of them get through. Merrick's milky eyes widened. His hands trembled. Boy, he whispered. Where did you learn that? No tribal warlord thinks in layers. No one speaks of reaction forces or controlled engagement. I couldn't tell him. Not fully. Not about the memories of a life where warfare was science, not instinct. Dreams, I said. Vivid ones. He didn't believe me, but he didn't press. That night, the bandits came. 6 of them, moving through the ruins with torches. They'd spotted Merrick's cook fire and smelled easy prey. 1 old man and 1 half-dead exile. But I'd already mapped the architecture. I positioned Merrick at the secondary platform with throwing stones, gave myself the choke point with my dull knife, and waited. 3 coming left, I called out. 2 right. 1 hanging back, he's the leader. Merrick harassed the right group. Drive them toward me. Merrick threw. The bandits cursed and shifted. Now the left. Forced them to bunch up. They followed my voice like I was pulling strings. The lead bandit reached the choke point first, and then stopped. He just stopped. Mid-charge, torch raised, eyes locked on mine. I felt something bloom in my chest. Warmth spreading through my limbs, flowing into my words. Drop the torch, I said. He dropped it. The other bandits hesitated. Then they ran. Merrick gripped my shoulder. As I stood over the retreating figures, my hands shaking. Not from fear. From the alien sensation of power flowing through my commands, memories of leading armies colliding with this new reality. You're awakening, Merrick whispered. Command Aura, the gift of warlords. And something more. Your past life instincts are calling forth power this world hasn't seen in generations. I stared at my trembling hands. The warmth still pulsed there, waiting. They threw away a warlord reborn, Merrick said, his grip tightening. Now let's teach these primitives what true command looks like. 6 months in the thorn waste had carved the softness from my face and replaced it with something harder. I crouched behind a boulder, watching the bandit raid unfold below, 12 men with rusted blades surrounding a cluster of refugees who'd made the fatal mistake of traveling the Ashbone Pass at dawn. The refugees were farmers. I could tell by their hands, their posture, the way they huddled rather than scattered. Exiles from one of the Heartland tribes, probably cast out for failing to meet harvest quotas. 14 of them, Merrick wheezed beside me. 12 bandits, 2 with crossbows on the ridge. I'd already counted, already mapped the terrain, already chosen my approach. Stay here. I moved before he could argue. The first crossbowman never saw me. I'd spent months learning to move through this poison landscape, and my body had adapted to silence the way it once adapted to commanding tank battalions. I took him from behind with a stolen dagger, lowered his body quietly, then signaled to the second position. But I didn't need to kill the second one. Drop your weapon, I said, letting the warmth bloom in my chest and flow into my words. He dropped it. His eyes went wide with confusion, his hands trembling. Voiced here command Aura. Merrick had taught me to channel it deliberately now, to project authority through tone and presence rather than letting it surge uncontrolled. The effect was limited, small groups, direct eye contact, simple commands. But in the right moment, it was enough. I shoved him off the ridge. He tumbled down the slope, screaming, and the bandits below scattered from their huddle of victims to face the new threat. That's when I hit them from the side. Not alone. I'd gathered 5 deserters over the past months. Broken men who'd felt something pull them toward Merrick's ruins without understanding why. My presence was growing, Merrick said, drawing the lost and desperate like moths to flame. We crashed into the bandits' flank. While they stared up at the ridge, 3 went down in the first exchange. The refugees, given a moment to breathe, did what desperate people do. They grabbed rocks, grabbed the fallen crossbow, grabbed anything. The battle lasted 40 seconds. Afterward, I stood over the survivors, 4 bandits on their knees, 11 refugees staring at me with a mixture of terror and hope. 1 woman stood apart from the others. Cropped black hair, 2 fingers missing from her left hand, and eyes that calculated rather than cowered. She'd killed 2 bandits herself during the chaos. I'd watched her move. Who leads you? I asked the refugees. They looked at each other. No one answered. Who leads you? The scarred woman countered. I smiled. Edo. Her name was Kessa Thornborn. She'd been exiled from her clan for theft, medicine for her dying brother. Not that the elders cared about reasons. She'd survived the thorn waste by selling her skills. As a scout to whoever could pay. You command well, she said that night, sitting across the fire from me. while Merrick slept and my deserters stood watch. Too well. No warlord I've seen fights like you do. You think in patterns, angles. You knew where every enemy would move before they moved. In my past life, I'd commanded mechanized battalions. I'd studied combined arms doctrine, logistics, terrain analysis. I'd led men against enemies with air support and artillery, coordination that required millisecond precision across kilometers of battlefield. This world's warlords fought like children swinging sticks. I learned from a better teacher than most, I said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Prove it. The ambush came 3 days later. Kessa had led me to a box canyon to scout a potential base. I recognized the trap the moment I saw the canyon walls. Perfect kill zone, single entrance, elevated positions on both sides. 12 bandits waited above. Her former crew, she admitted later. They wanted the refugee supplies, and Kessa had agreed to deliver me in exchange for her brother's safety. You understand, she said, knife pressed to my back. I understand. I also understood terrain. I'd positioned the refugees at the canyon entrance rather than inside. Despite Kessa's insistence, we all entered together. I placed my 5 deserters on the ridge opposite the bandits' position. When Kessa pushed me forward, I didn't resist. When the bandits rose to attack, my men rose behind them. Crossfire, the most basic combined arms principle. The bandits had focused entirely on the canyon floor, never checking their flanks, never considering that prey might bite back. The slaughter took less than a minute. I captured Kessa's brother alive, a gaunt young man named Torvin who'd been holding a crossbow aimed at my head. I could have killed him. Should have, by Thornwaste law. Instead, I handed him a water skin. Drink, I said. Then decide. Kessa stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Why? Because fear makes followers. Loyalty makes soldiers. I met her eyes. I need soldiers. She knelt. Not because my aura compelled her. I hadn't used it. She knelt because she chose to. Teach me to fight like you do, she said. Merrick accelerated my training. After that, command aura grew stronger with use, he explained, but it also required understanding, knowing what you commanded and why. He drilled me on tactical histories, ancient siege warfare, the rise and fall of warlords who'd held Dominion tier power. Your past life gave you knowledge, he said during one session. But knowledge without power is worthless in this world. You must merge what you were with what you're becoming. I pushed harder, channeled deeper. Something cracked inside me. My aura surged, not just voice anymore, but presence. A shimmer in the air around me, visible to anyone watching. I felt it ripple outward across the thorn waste, a pulse of authority that demanded attention. Over the following week, 11 more outcasts wandered into our ruins. They couldn't explain why they'd come, only that something had called them. I established the Iron Vow clan on a moonless night. 17 members stood in the courtyard of the Thornwaste fortress I'd claimed. Bandits, deserters, refugees, and Kessa with her brother at her side. I'd taught them basic formation tactics, unit cohesion, the concept of ranks and specialization that no primitive warlord had ever considered. Strength through discipline, I said, letting my aura flow into every word. Loyalty through merit. Power through unity. They swore the oath. Not because I compelled them, because I offered them something no one else had. Purpose. Word spread. Within a month, a messenger arrived wearing a necklace of finger bones. Khan Vorith the Red demanded my submission. I sent the messenger back alive, with a map marking Vorith's weakest supply line, calculations any modern logistics officer could make, but incomprehensible to primitive warlords who'd never considered supply chains as targets. 3 weeks later, Kessa returned from a scouting mission. She carried Vorith's own banner, stolen from his camp, while his men chased shadows. His raiding party hit the marked supply point, she reported. Found it stripped clean. Your scouts took everything. I examined the banner. Crude stitching, human leather backing. The Khan's personal standard. He'll come for you now, Kessa warned. I smiled for the first time since exile. Good. Let him face a true commander. 2 years turned exiles into soldiers. I stood on the watchtower of Iron Vow Fortress, watching 300 fighters drill in the courtyard below. Pike formations wheeled with precision that would have impressed my old drill sergeants. Cavalry units, scavenged horses trained for coordinated charges, practiced flanking maneuvers I'd sketched from memories of tank doctrine. Rotating defensive line reform. Kessa's voice cracked across the yard. The formation shifted. Shields locked. Spears bristled outward like a steel hedgehog. In my previous life, I'd commanded mechanized battalions against insurgent forces. Here I commanded former murderers, thieves, and the abandoned. And they moved like a single organism because my command aura made them feel what I intended before I spoke it. Merrick shuffled up beside me, his breath rattling. You've built something impossible. I've built something necessary. I watched a young recruit stumble, then catch himself, as my presence projected confidence into his spine. Vorith is coming. Everyone knows it. The old man's milky eyes found mine. The refugees brought worse news this morning. I'd already heard. Vorith had crushed the Blackstone clan and the River Walkers in a single month. 200 combined fighters absorbed or eaten. His Crimson Horde now numbered over 2,000. But the refugees brought something more valuable than warnings. They brought descriptions of how warriors had frozen mid-charge, their muscles locked by supernatural terror. How entire battalions had dropped their weapons and knelt, weeping, as Vorith walked among them, choosing who would live. Fear Aura, a corrupted variant of command magic that projected dread instead of inspiration. I understood it now. Fear was just another tactical variable. His gift is powerful, Merrick said. The stories say he's invincible. I turned from the wall. Stories said I was worthless. Stories are weapons for those who can't fight. The vanguard came 3 weeks later. 800 warriors blackened the valley below our fortress like a bloodstain spreading across cloth. Kessa found me in the war room, studying maps I'd drawn from memory and scout reports. 800 against our 200 who can fight, she said. We should evacuate. Regroup in the deep waste. No, Soren, I need this battle. I traced the terrain with a scarred finger. I need to understand how his fear aura works in direct conflict with my command. If I run now, I'll never know if we can break him. She stared at me. 2 years ago, she'd thought me mad. Now she thought me reckless. But she'd learned the difference between madness and calculation. The non-combatants? Already evacuating through the northern tunnels. Only fighters remain. She exhaled. Then we die here, or we become legends. Legends don't die. I rolled up the map. They just choose their moment. Dawn painted the battlefield in blood-red light. My 200 fighters held the fortress approach, the only viable attack route through the rocky terrain I'd chosen for exactly this purpose. The Crimson Horde vanguard advanced in a loose mob, confident in numbers and their commander's reputation. Their war drums pounded a rhythm designed to terrify. I felt the fear aura before I saw its effects. Cold fog rolled across the valley floor. My fighters began trembling. Spears shook. A young man in the front line dropped to his knees, whimpering. The vanguard commander, a massive brute with ritual scars across his bare chest, raised his axe and screamed. The fear intensified. Half my line wavered. I stepped forward. My command aura surged outward like a physical force. Not inspiration this time, opposition. A bubble of clarity that pushed against the creeping dread. I felt the two powers collide in the air between our forces, visible, as shimmering distortion where terror met resolve. Iron Vow, I roared. The trembling stopped. Spears steadied. The kneeling man rose, his face hardening. They want you afraid. I amplified my presence, projecting it into every fighter who wore my clan's mark. Fear is their only weapon. Show them what discipline does to fear. The Crimson Horde charged. My pike line held. The first wave crashed against our formation and broke. Spears punched through leather and flesh. Shields locked and pushed. The second wave faltered. As bodies piled before them, I watched the vanguard commander through the chaos. He stood on a rocky outcrop 200 yards back, directing the assault with broad gestures. A commander's mistake. He'd positioned himself for visibility instead of protection. Kessa. I didn't look away from the target. 20 riders. Northern approach through the rocks. She vanished. I drew my sword, plain iron, nothing special, and pushed into the melee. My command aura carved a path through the chaos. Every fighter near me moved with borrowed certainty, their strikes landing where enemies didn't expect. The commander saw my approach too late. Kessa's cavalry hit his position from the flank. While he was watching me, he turned, axe raised, and I was already there, sliding between two of his guards with positioning that looked like luck, but was pure geometry. My blade took him through the throat. Not a strong strike, just the right angle, the right moment. His body hit the rocks. The fear aura rippled, then collapsed. Without their commander, without the supernatural dread holding them together, the vanguard broke. 800 warriors scattered across the valley, chased by a force 1/4 their size. We killed 300. The rest fled to tell Vorith what had happened. I found Merrick at the gate that night. He'd taken a spear defending the walls, a wound he'd hidden during the battle. Should have told me, I said. Wouldn't have changed anything. Blood bubbled at his lips. You needed to focus. I knelt beside him. The man who'd taught me to see this world's warfare, who'd given me the magical primer that started my arcane education, dying in a fortress we'd built from nothing. His hand gripped my wrist with surprising strength. You've proven yourself more than reborn, he whispered. You're the first true warlord this age has seen. His milky eyes found mine one last time. Make them remember you. As a god. His grip loosened. His chest stilled. I closed his eyes. Then I stood and faced my clan. 300 fighters gathered in torchlight, blood-splattered and exhausted and victorious. The Khan will come himself now, I said. When he does, we show him what a commander from the modern world can do. Vorith stood before the smoking ruins of his vanguard camp, counting the bodies of warriors who had never known defeat until they met Soren's pike formations. 500 dead. His fists shook with rage that bordered on madness. We march the heartlands, he said softly. His lieutenants flinched at the gentleness in his voice. They knew that tone preceded atrocities. If the boy loves his homeland so much that he fights like a demon to build power near it, then we'll make him watch it burn. The Crimson Horde broke camp within the hour. 5,000 fighters painted their faces with ash and blood, strapping on finger-bone trophies and sharpening blades that had tasted flesh across a dozen conquered territories. They didn't march toward Iron Vow's fortress. They marched past it, leaving Soren behind. As they poured toward the fertile valleys of the Harvest Compact, I received Kessa's scouting report at dawn. She tracked the Horde's movement through the night, watching their torches snake eastward like a burning serpent. He's not coming for us, she said, confusion in her voice. He's going around. I understood immediately. Vorith couldn't admit defeat to his warriors, couldn't explain how a small clan had shattered his vanguard. But if he destroyed the Heartlands, if he raised the very tribes that had birthed me, he'd prove his dominance, while forcing me to react on his terms. Clever. Brutal. Exactly what I'd have done in his position. Chief Brennick received the warning 3 days later. A shepherd boy came screaming into Ashval's gates, babbling about an army that stretched to the horizon, led by a giant in a cloak of human bones. Brennick sent riders to the 11 other tribes of the Harvest Compact. The mutual defense pact that hadn't been tested in 3 generations creaked to life. Warriors gathered from scattered farmsteads, clutching harvest axes and hunting spears, wearing leather armor that had softened from years of peaceful storage. 2,000 farmers assembled on the plains before the Heartland's eastern border. Brennick rode before them on his massive warhorse, his diagonal scar catching the morning light. He raised his axe and roared words of courage. Then Vorith's army crested the ridge. 5,000 killers marched in loose formation, their war drums shaking the earth. And at their head, Vorith the Red unleashed his fear aura. It hit the Compact's forces like a physical weight. Warriors who had never experienced supernatural terror felt their legs lock, their hands tremble, their breath catch. Brennick screamed orders that no one could obey. His strongest champion, a man who'd killed 3 wolves with his bare hands, dropped his weapon and stood frozen. As a Horde rider cut him down, the battle lasted 2 hours. The rout lasted less. 3 tribes fell before sunset. The survivors fled west, pursued by howling raiders who caught the slow and the wounded. Brennick retreated behind Ashvile's wooden walls with perhaps 400 fighters, watching smoke rise from burning villages that had stood for generations. "This is impossible," he whispered. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The fear Aura's touch lingered in his bones like poison. No army fights like this. No man has that kind of power. But he'd seen Vortha's face across the battlefield, that soft smile, those gentle eyes, and understood that this wasn't warfare. As he knew it, this was annihilation. The council convened in Ashvile's great hall. 12 elders, what remained of them, argued in voices raw with grief and terror. "We cannot fight that magic," one said. "Our warriors freeze like rabbits before wolves." "Then we flee," another suggested. "Abandon the heartlands, rebuild in the west, and lose everything our ancestors built? Better to die." Elder Hennick raised his hand. The room fell silent. He was the oldest among them, a man who remembered the last great warlord incursion 50 years ago. "There is one who has defeated Vorth," Hennick said carefully. "One who commands forces that fight without fear. One who wields." He hesitated, knowing the weight of his next word. "Magic." Brennick's face purpled with rage. "You speak of the demon-touched boy I rightfully exiled. The one who muttered madness about artillery and combined arms. He is nothing. He commands 300 warriors who destroyed Vortha's vanguard," Hennick replied. "He holds a fortress that the Horde could not take. And yes, he wields the arcane arts. The very power that makes Vorth unstoppable might be matched by your exile. I will not beg from that worthless." The hall shuddered. Outside, screams rose from the walls. Every warrior in the room felt it. A distant pressure against their minds, a creeping dread that made their hearts stutter. Vortha's army had arrived. Brennick ran to the battlements. On the horizon, the Crimson Horde spread like a bloodstain across the land. Even at this distance, the fear aura touched him. His hands gripped the wooden railing hard enough to splinter it. His warriors gathered behind him. Men he'd led for 20 years. Men who trusted his strength above all else. "Go," one said. "Beg if you must. We'll die if you don't." Brennick's face crumbled. The massive chieftain who had ruled through strength and cruelty looked at his trembling hands and saw only weakness. He rode alone that night, his clan banner lowered in supplication. The Iron Vow sentries found him at dawn. 3 men who had once been Ashvile's lowest. The crippled, the weak, the unwanted. Now wore disciplined leather armor and carried weapons forged in our growing smithies. They recognized the banner. They recognized the man. The beating was thorough. They broke his nose, cracked 2 ribs, and split his lip before dragging him through our fortress gates. I heard the commotion from my quarters, where I'd been studying Merrick's magical texts, and walked to meet my past. Brennick was thrown at my feet. His bronze-ringed beard was matted with blood. His massive frame seemed diminished somehow. If this story has you hooked, Butterfly Stories on Patreon is where the next parts, exclusive continuations, and early releases are waiting. You can start with a free trial right now through the link below. All right, back to the story. Kneeling in the dirt of my courtyard, my Iron Vow warriors gathered. 300 exiles and outcasts who had become something more, a disciplined force that the primitive tribes couldn't comprehend. They watched in silence, feeling my command aura settle over them like a familiar cloak. "Chief Brennick," I said, "you look different from below." He raised his head. Blood dripped from his chin. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never expected. Pure, abject terror. "Soren." His voice cracked. "Blood of my blood. The Horde comes for us all. Vorth is magic. We cannot fight it. Only you have shown you can stand against him." He pressed his forehead to the ground. "I invoke the ancient ties. Tribe to exile. Father's brother to nephew's son. Save us." I rested my hand on my sword. The leather grip was warm from my palm. 3 years of rage burned in my chest. Memories of being cast out. My clan marks scraped away, left to die in the thorn waste because I wasn't strong enough for their primitive understanding of power. You scraped my mark away because you couldn't see the power within me. My voice was ice, carrying the weight of my command aura. Every warrior in the courtyard felt it. Now you beg before magic you'll never understand. Brennick's face crumbled completely. The man who had been my people's strength, their unbreakable chieftain, wept in the dirt at my feet. I let the silence stretch. My hand rested on my sword. One word and Brennick's head would roll across the courtyard stones. 3 years of exile screamed for it. Kessa's fingers brushed my arm, not restraining, reminding. Dead. He's forgotten, she murmured. Alive, he serves. Every day he breathes under your command teaches these primitives that their old ways are obsolete. I looked down at Brennick's shaking form. The man who'd scraped my clan mark away. The uncle who'd called me demon-touched for speaking of supply lines and flanking maneuvers. Killing him would feel good for exactly 1 moment. Then I'd be just another thorn-waste warlord who murdered his way to a footnote. Ruling him? That made me a legend. Get up. My command aura pressed the words into his bones. He rose, trembling, unable to resist. The Ashvale tribe no longer exists. You are Ironvow now. Your people will learn discipline. They will learn formation warfare. And those with the gift will learn to channel command magic or perish in irrelevance. Brennick's face twisted. Magic is demoncraft. Magic is power. I let lightning crackle across my fingertips. Blue light reflected in his terrified eyes. And power is all that matters in the Sunder territories. Kneel and swear. He knelt. He swore. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. I could see it. But he spoke them, and his warriors followed, and the Ashvale tribe died in that courtyard without a single drop of blood. I had just conquered my first farming clan. The heartlands lay open before me. We marched at dawn. I drove the combined force hard. Ironvow veterans at the core, former Ashvale farmers learning to march and step around them. 300 warriors became 800 overnight. Kessa scouted ahead. Her reports came back every few hours. The Harvest Compact was collapsing. Word of Vorith's advance had spread. Word of my victory over Brennick spread faster. The first Compact tribe intercepted us at Milford Crossing. Chief Tovin rode out with 50 warriors, expecting negotiation. I don't negotiate with primitives, I told him. My presence tier aura washed over his men. They felt the weight of true command, and their horses shifted nervously. You swear to Ironvow, or you die. Choose. Devant chose survivor. The second tribe, the grain holders, sent their elders before we even reached their borders. They'd heard what happened at Milford. They prostrated themselves in the road, offering grain stores and fighting men. I accepted both. By the time the walls of Ashvale appeared on the horizon, my former home, now burning under Vorth's assault, I commanded nearly 2,000 warriors. Each oath sworn pulsed through my command aura like a heartbeat. I could feel them all, every fighter bound to my will, a web of loyalty and power that hummed in my blood. This was what Dominion felt like. Not yet achieved, but close. So close I could taste it. Vorith had deployed his army in 3 columns outside Ashvile's shattered gates. The Crimson Horde, 5,000 strong, painted in blood, wearing fingerbone talismans. His fear aura radiated across the battlefield like a sickness. I felt it hit my lines. The Ashvale farmers, barely trained, still thinking like peasants, froze. Their weapons trembled. Some dropped to their knees, whimpering. But my Ironvow veterans held. They trained for this. Kessa had drilled them in command magic meditation, learning to channel my aura. As a shield against exactly this kind of assault. Their minds locked onto mine, drawing strength, rejecting the fear. The line stabilized. I pushed my presence tier projection outward, straining against Vorth's assault. Sweat beaded on my forehead. My vision narrowed. 2 auras clashing, his terror against my will, neither giving ground. For a moment, terror won. I felt my farmers beginning to break. Felt the compact warriors wavering. The fear crawled into my own mind, whispering that I was still that weak boy who'd been cast out. Still nothing, still no. I remembered Elder Merrick's final words. Make them remember you. Make them fear to forget. I remembered dying in my past life, not to weakness, but to a command failure I'd never repeat. I remembered every insult, every scraped clan mark, every moment of exile that had forged me into something these primitive minds couldn't comprehend. My command aura exploded outward. Dominion tier, the mythical level. I felt it happen, felt the barriers shatter, felt 2,000 warriors become extensions of my own body. Every fighter on my side moved. As one organism, the left flank pivoted, the right flank advanced. Cavalry that had never trained together hammered Vorth's weak points with perfect synchronization. Archers loosed in waves that seemed choreographed by divine hands. Because they were choreographed by me. Vorth's army, built on terror, shattered when that terror met overwhelming will. The Khan charged me personally. I expected nothing less from a man who'd eaten his rivals' hearts. His fear aura hit me at point-blank range. For one heartbeat, I felt the full weight of his power, the accumulated dread of 1,000 victims. Then my Dominion tier command froze him mid-stride. His eyes went wide, his muscles locked. He couldn't understand what was happening, why his body refused to obey him. Fear should have been enough, he whispered. My warriors swarmed him with blades. I stood over Vorth's corpse, as the sun set behind Ashvile's burning walls. The fingerbone cloak lay scattered in the mud. The Khan who'd terrorized the Sunder territories for 5 years was just meat now. I turned to face the kneeling thousands. Former enemies, former tribesmen, former rejects who'd been discarded by clans too stupid to see their worth. All mine now, Brennick knelt among them, stripped of rank, carrying water for Iron Vow soldiers. The man who'd exiled me was now my servant. His hand shook. As he worked, I planted my banner in Ashvile's central square, the exact spot where my clan mark had been scraped away. The crimson wolf of Iron Vow snapped in the evening wind. I was thrown out, as weak by a world that didn't understand power. My Dominion tier voice carried across the entire army. Every soul heard it, felt it in their bones. Now you kneel before command magic itself, before true Dominion. Remember what you discarded. I turned my back on Brennick's broken form. The war tent waited, and my mind was already mapping the next conquest. But Kessa caught my arm, her face pale. Soren. Her voice was barely a whisper. The scouts just returned. The eastern border. What about it? She pressed a tattered parchment into my hand. Imperial script. The dead language of the fallen empire whose ruins had given me everything. Except the empire wasn't dead. The seal at the bottom was fresh. The signature bore a title I'd only read in Elder Merrick's forbidden texts. Archon Commander of the Eternal Dominion. 3 words were written beneath. We are returning. Want to see what happens next? Continue this story on Butterfly Stories over on Patreon. Start your free trial to unlock the next episodes. Link in the description.